Hello and welcome to the Fundamental Value Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Frank, co-founder and CEO of The Tie. Quick disclaimer before we begin, nothing is investment advice. Read our show notes for complete disclosures. You guys don't really want to hear this. But in this week's episode, I am very, very excited about this. I talked to both JJ Petersen and Alex Friedberg from BXB Capital a few weeks ago, and they were telling me about their story of, kind of being the kings of the Kimchi premium. So that's going to be kind of the focus of this episode. Super excited to have you guys on. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
And so, the question we like to start with every guest is, unfortunately we had lives before crypto, before we fell down this rabbit hole and got wrapped up in all the nonsense we're about to speak about. What were your lives before crypto? And how did you guys meet?
So I can probably start. We met in college. We were in the same fraternity together, and I went the walk of life of the tech side. So out of college, I went to work for Amazon. Moved from Boston to my hometown area, represent up here, out to Seattle, and then worked there at Amazon for a couple of years. Yeah. And then there's this company called Coupang, which is actually going to IPO this year, hopefully. And there was a really cool opportunity where I had the ability to go move out there, move to Korea, figure that whole situation out. And that was kind of the foray where like my expertise in crypto and Korea kind of started. So on the tech side, like, building lots of systems, focused on mobile product development, e-commerce, that whole side of the world was my background, which is great. I love that. And in 2017, that was when there was a lot of the kind of Kimchi premiums maybe being brought to light a little bit more. So one of my buddies who worked at Coupang with me, he came over to my place and was like, hey, if you just send me Bitcoin, and I was like, what's Bitcoin? First of all, he's like, just ignore all that, right? Like, if you just send me Bitcoin, we can make like 10%. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm a tech guy. Like, I'm working on like mobile product development stuff. I don't understand like what is arbitrage. And he's like, just listen, just do it. And so he brought some beers and he brought his dog over to my place on a Sunday, right? And we were just doing it, and all of a sudden, a couple minutes, let's say 30 minutes goes by, right, after all the block times and things like that. And he's like, cool, we now have $100 more than we started with. And I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. And for me, I was like, the only person that I really know and trust in finance is JJ. So basically gave him a call and was talking about this, and I think he can maybe share a little bit more about his background. But that's kind of where the seed story started, and then from there it was just a whole crazy adventure on blowing it out of the water.
Yeah, let's hear your background, JJ, because I know we're going to get really deep into this story really fast. Let's get a quick background before we start diving in.
Yeah, so my background, my family has a wealth management company. I started learning to code technical systems when I was 15. I bought my first stock with my birthday money when I was 12. So I got my license to.
What was your first stock you bought?
Elon. And they ended up going bankrupt, I think. It was it was the worst pick you could ever make. But I always say in trading and investing, the best lessons are the ones you pay for. So yeah, it was interesting. Anyhow, so I got my license to become an investment advisor on my 18th birthday. First day you could legally do it. I still think I might have the record for the youngest person to ever do it, but never got that confirmed.
I mean, you couldn't be any younger unless somebody got it the minute they turned 18.
Yeah, well, technically I started taking the test before my birth time, and I came out of the test 1 hour after my birth time. So it'd be pretty hard for someone to beat me. So anyhow,
that's a challenge to all our 17-year-old listeners here.
I still think I hold the record, but anyhow, yeah. So did that before I went to college. Met Alex, and then out of college, I went back and I, started working with my family, doing traditional wealth management, and then we were kind of working on building some technical systems. I've always kind of been working on those. And then Alex called me up about this crypto opportunity, and I took one look at it and I said, whoa, okay, we can make a lot of money doing this.
And so had you touched crypto before, or was this both of your first experience with digital assets?
Okay, so I had been looking at crypto for a while, and I kept just thinking it was like just all scam, garbage, trash. And like I wrote an email in 2013.
Yeah, you gotta tell them about the email.
Yeah, so like a bunch of guys in our fraternity were like, "What's Bitcoin?" So like I wrote an email to the fraternity, and I was like, and I kind of gave my whole spiel on what it was because I'd been looking at it, and then I was like, honestly, your best bet is probably just to arbitrage the markets because it looks pretty inefficient right now. And like I didn't do it, and like I still look at that email from 2013, and like what the heck was I doing? Like,
I think the best part about that is we didn't even like find that email until after we had started arbitraging and being like, yeah, we
didn't find that email until like 2019 or something. It was like well after we had done everything.
Yeah, everybody has that story. I still remember, one of my co-founders of my company, I think I've said this before on the podcast, was actually back in 2013, was basically, providing short-term Bitcoin loans on Bitfinex at the time for like, more than 100% APY. And he's like, this is just way too risky. And I remember talking to him in 2013, and I had some money, being Jewish, I had a bar mitzvah, and we all get a little bit of kesef, or money, as they say. And so, I had a little bit of money and just had whatever generic, crappy stocks that yielded 8% a year. And it just didn't listen to him, didn't even look at it. And so I think we all have that unfortunate story, but we're here now, and you guys made a lot of money off this thing called the Kimchi premium. So let's get into that. Before we even get into the story, what is the Kimchi premium? How did this thing start? And then let's hear how, Alex, how your call from JJ led to this, what should be movie on, chasing the Kimchi premium.
Many of our friends, like when we told the story to our friends, like our really core group of friends for the first time, they were like, have you guys documented this? Because this definitely sounds like a crazy movie. So for the people who don't know, the Kimchi premium is what they call the price premiums around crypto assets in Korea. And so Korea is a very capital control heavy country. If you are a Korean, there is limitations and a lot of restrictions on money that you can wire outside of Korea. And Korea is a very isolated ecosystem. And so if you're trying to connect the global, crypto ecosystem, or even, global financial services, there are very strict and few routes that you can go to or go through. And so what happened when there was, not as much attention, liquidity, and people in the crypto markets, the prices of Bitcoin were just a lot higher in Korea. To the amounts of, in the craziest peak times, it was 55% higher, right? And so like, I think it was like trading at just under, like in end of 2017, it was like almost 20K USD, like 19 and change USD. And you could sell Bitcoin for 30 million won, right? You could just, if you had access to any Bitcoin purchasing avenues anywhere else outside of the country, and then you could send it into the country and sell it on Upbit, Bithumb, Coin1, Corbit, you would just make instantly 50%.
That's so absurd. Like, for anybody listening, that is the most ridiculous thing ever, that you can take an asset and sell it in a different country for 50%. And so how did this get started, right? You did this trade with your friend in Korea, and you turned $1,000 into 1,100. How did JJ respond? I mean, obviously you were skeptical, Alex, when you first did this. What was JJ's response?
After my friend left, he was like, yeah, man, like as long as you can figure out the banking in the US and you can, increase your limits on whatever US exchange, like we can start ramping this up. I was like, okay, like I just need to do some research, right? Like I think as a product person, I'm all about benchmarking and research and, trying to figure out what are the options. So call to JJ went like this. Hey, JJ, like, did this thing called like arbitrage. I'm not sure what it is. He's like, yeah, that's like, yeah, I know a lot about that, of course. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. So this is what we did. I just bought $1,000, whatever, and sent it here. He's like, yeah, can I get in on that? And I think I was just like, yeah, I don't know. Cause for me, it was just like, I don't even know what's going on right now. And so, basically just I think we got on a call maybe with Jiho, who's our buddy. And we were just like talking about it. And JJ was great because he was like, guys, like you both have jobs. None of you clearly know how to trade. I can trade. Like, let me be the trader. And so we kind of just started figuring out who can do what, right? Because, we have to figure out how do we get the money to the bank and how do we, get it into the system in the US side, get it out on the Korea side, and then, trading it along the way. And so I think it just started by saying like, who has time to do this? And me and Jiho definitely had the least amount of time, just because we had full-time jobs. So it was just how can we start doing this the simplest way possible, which is just personally, JJ who's never met Jiho before, he's like, I'm going to send you this money, and because I trust Alex, I'm hoping that this guy will send this money back to me on the tail end. And that's how it started.
Oh yeah, no, it was pretty hilarious because both of us, Jiho and I, were both just taking like all the cash that we had, which was like not a lot at the time, like, and we were just like, okay, like I'm gonna send you like a bunch of cash, and I'm gonna hope that it comes back to me. But I just took one look at this, and I was just like, we can make a ridiculous killing on this.
It was also before like everyone was, let's get on Zoom and let's meet people face to face. So like, I don't think that, these guys saw each other's faces for months after we started. All trust.
I don't think I ever like really saw Jiho's face until I came to Korea, like after we had done tons of volume.
Yeah.
No, like
and so what? No, go for it.
No. I was gonna say, I think the funny part though was like when Jiho and like Alex looked at this at first, they were looking at like maxing out a Coinbase account with like 30,000, and I was just like, yeah, like okay, guys, we're just gonna scale this because like this is ridiculous. Like my mind just instantly went to like, how do we just move as much money as possible? And that was.
And so how did the trade actually work? So I'm assuming it's, JJ, you went to a US exchange, put as much cash on as you could, bought as much Bitcoin, sent it to Korea, then sold the Bitcoin for Korean won. But how'd you actually get the Korean won back into US dollars? How did that work?
Yeah, okay. So that's the big secret of the trade, right? That's what everyone wanted to know because everyone saw this trade. It wasn't like we were like gods for identifying.
I mean, everybody saw on CoinMarketCap. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you guys remember when CoinMarketCap removed Korean pairs from their pricing back in 2017. Everything crashed because of just how big the premium was.
Yes. So no, what happened was we started off by using both of our bank accounts, and then it went towards just using my bank account. And it was basically the first few routes were just like personal. And effectively, like I would take all the cash in my account, and then we were using Kraken at the time. And we would put it into Kraken, and then I'd buy Bitcoin. And then like there was no hedging in 2017. Like there was no markets. Like, so we would just send it, hope the block times were short, and then we would like
right. And I guess the price of Bitcoin could go down 10% by the time your block got confirmed in 2017, just because of how volatile markets.
Spoiler alert! There were some interesting calls that we.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to explain like the fluctuation in the premiums because that was interesting. But yeah, we would just send the Bitcoin, and it would hit Korea. We'd sell it. We'd get it to a bank account and withdraw it. And a big part of the secret was like, how much could you pull out of the exchanges? And we can get into that. And then Jiho and Juan, who are our two Korean partners, just like we just had like this great entrepreneurship mindset of how to safely navigate the banks in a way that other people didn't. Like, I don't know how to say it better than that.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah.
so. Part of, I think part of capturing opportunity is being entrepreneurial in general, right? Whether it's trading or whether it's starting a company. And these two guys, they are definitely more entrepreneurial than most. Like they're, 500 startups, they've done YC. And so they're tech guys, right? They're definitely not finance guys. And for them, I think it was part of the challenge of like, wait, you're saying we can't just remit money how we want it? Like, this doesn't make sense, right? And so we went really deep onto what are the FX regulations of the Bank of Korea? Like, what are the things that you are allowed to do or the things that you are hard not allowed to do? And I think we just were more creative, right? We were really creative and we formalized our operations in ways that, the theoretical limit of if you were doing this with personal accounts and personal limits was like, yeah, like 30K, 50K, something like that. But because I think JJ had the vision to say, we can make this so much more. And the fact that, the team that we, I guess, put together was just like, we don't want to, quote unquote, break the system, but we definitely want to figure out how to navigate it exceptionally efficiently. And that's what we did. And we, created the company and we figured out, how can we get good relationship management with the exchanges and the banks and figure out an asset class that's emerging. Like, how can you basically arbitrage knowledge and information in ways that allow us to do the things that we were able to do?
And so one of the things that always went through my head is, I mean, banks are really slow. I mean, Bitcoin is slow, but banks are really slow. And I can't imagine that sending money from Korea to the US is an immediate thing.
No. This is the epic part. So Shinhan Bank and Chase Bank use the same like internal structure for Swift wires. So it was nearly instant for wires. So
Wow.
we had a perfect 24-hour turnaround from we would like I would start the process at 9 a.m. when I could go to the bank in the morning, and I walk into the branch, and the branch manager, like by the end of it, knew me because every day I was walking in just wiring out crazy amounts of money. And he was just like, okay, good to see you this morning. And he's like, oh, why didn't I see you yesterday or whatever? And I was walking in.
I mean,
and,
he
like,
must have thought you were laundering money or something, given the amount of cash you guys are trading.
Like, we got super lucky because my bank manager had a friend who made money on Ethereum. So he just like happened to know about crypto and he was super comfortable with it. So he just let me basically, he would approve anything I wanted. And we were giving them tons of wires, so they were fine with it. So morning, I would walk into the bank, disheveled, and wire the money into Kraken. And then it would hit Kraken, hopefully pretty quickly. Like sometimes this is where like, that was the slowest leg of it. And then we would buy crypto, send the crypto to Korea, sell, get it onto Shinhan Bank, and then wire it back. And typically like from 9 a.m., my wire would hit Kraken at about 2 to 4 p.m. And then I'd be done trading by about 6 p.m., which was like 3 a.m. Korea time.
4 a.m. in Korea time.
And then Jiho would go to the bank first thing in the morning, get the wire out. And then it would hit my bank and I would see it hit the bank at about like 11 p.m.
Obviously you have to spend a couple hours trading in. I mean, what kind of size did you guys get up to? I mean, I'm assuming you had to spend a couple hours trading out of that position as well, unwinding it in Korea.
Yeah, I think the biggest day we did was about 7 million in volume. No. We did 2 days. We had 2 days worth of wires. Yeah. So we did I think we did like 11 or 12 million of volume in one day. Yeah, that was a pretty profitable day.
I think so. Part of the I think oversight that you see in America is like, yeah, the banks are super slow, especially when you're trying to transfer in and out of exchanges. That is totally not what it's like in the rest of the world. And Korea specifically, almost all bank wires intra-country are instant. Like I can send to you like, just like P2P transactions on Venmo that are instant. Like that's what banking was like well before, 2017 in Korea. And so the fiat on off in Korea was actually not the hardest thing. Like it was very easy.
But what about the liquidity in Korea in terms of, okay, we've gotten we got to buy it. First of all, we want to buy $11 million worth of Bitcoin on Kraken. So what is your slippage there? How long does it take to put that trade on? How do you actually execute it? And it's not like you had smart order routers. It's not like you guys were routing the order across 7 different exchanges or to OTC desks. You guys were physically clicking a button to trade on Kraken. And so,
Yeah.
how do you actually get that position on without slippage? And that takes time, right? And your cost basis is potentially changing significantly as you're trading in and out of that into that position. But also, how do you get out in Korea? I mean, what is the liquidity like there? Are you splitting that order up across multiple exchanges?
Yeah, we actually had, we ended up with 2 other partners. So this was part of the story of how we got scale. We had 2 other partners in America who came in. And one of them was this girl, and she had a Chase private bank connection. And she was like a private wealth client for Chase. So they gave her infinite wires, and she happened to be on Gemini. Like, because you couldn't, like, we were waiting 6 months to get applications through for corporate accounts. Like Coinbase didn't give us an account. Like, I was sitting waiting from, I don't know, July, and I think I finally got approved for a corporate account in, I don't know, January or February.
I mean, I remember in early 2018, I met with the CEO of Bittrex, was that something where he was talking, and he's like, we have like an 8-month delay to make an account.
Yeah, exactly. So no, part of it was we just found another partner in the US who happened to have a Gemini account, and Gemini had a ton of volume in like late 2017. So she would just buy, and like this was where spreads were like 20-25%. And like I couldn't do all the trading at this point. So like when she would buy, we would probably take like 2%, 3% of slippage. And like, and I think it was just one of those things where, in hindsight, I actually still regret that, because I know that if I had done all the manual trading, we probably could have taken more, but we'd break it up into like 500K, $1 million orders. And then you just route that 5, 6, 7 times, take a couple hours.
And then on the Korea side, we, as we were scaling, so part of the other story was like, in terms of my background as well, I was getting a little burnt out of e-commerce, so ended up moving to Singapore to work for Grab. But because all of this started, this was also the time where like we really started ramping up. So I was only, I'd say like 3 months into my stay with Singapore after relocating here. I was like, sorry guys, like gonna have to quit and move back to Korea. And then we were just trying to figure out how can we build better relationships with the exchanges. So we would split it up to like all of the big 4 exchanges in Korea at the time, which was Corbit, CoinOne, BitThumb, and then we were trying to do Upbit, but they weren't really on personal accounts. And so the funny thing is like the trading in 2017 in Korea was just bananas, right? So like there was so much.
Every retail person in Korea, every young person.
Order books, I think, were a lot thicker than they are now today. But the most button clicking that we actually had to do was withdrawing money from the exchange, because they have this weird policy where you can only withdraw in blocks of like let's say 90K, 100 million Korean won, and that requires like tons of like OTP, stuff like that. So like the most time that we would have to spend is like waking up at 6 in the morning, and I was like, okay, like, I'm just gonna like click all these buttons. And
I have to. Yeah, I mean, at 11 million in withdrawals, it's a lot of. That's 110 withdrawals plus.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. So like finally, like Juan wrote like a little script, and we like had these things like helping it, but like that was like our pain in the ass, right? It's just like, God, like how can we get like higher withdrawal limits? And they're just like, nope, no, like definitely can't. We can increase your volume and we can increase your limits, but we cannot change the per withdrawal blocks. God damn it.
Okay, but so when you first started, Alex, you had $1,000 is what you told me. How the hell did you get to 11 million? I mean, I know if you take 1,000 and then you make 20% on it every day, and 20%, 20%, and 20% in compounds, but getting up to being able to do 11 million is a big difference.
Should we tell them the Kraken story?
No.
And also, were you taking leverage on any of these positions as well? Were you guys borrowing?
We weren't taking leverage. A lot of it. Okay, so part of the story that I think is like really important was the time from like May until basically like November
of 17.
2017, yeah,
Yep.
where spreads were about 2%. And like this is actually the whole way that it like became possible for us to do what we did in December and January, was because there was a 2% spread, and I don't know, a lot of like these guys were kind of like, like it's not really worth it, it's pretty difficult. And I was like, okay, you know what? I like literally just stood up in the office and I told my parents, I was like, hey, just like stop paying me for a little while. I'm gonna try to do this. So I manually traded by hand like 100, 200K on a 1 or 2% spread every single day. And I would basically take every single trade as a day trade, and I didn't know how long I was going to be in the trade for. But I was starting every trade at like a 1 or 2% like profit, and I ended up with like a 96% like win rate on that. Like, yeah, you're starting every trade at a profit. Problem is, you don't know if you're holding that trade for 30 minutes or for like 3 hours.
36 hours after the BCH. Before that was a difficult.
Yeah. So we started off by just like trying to make. We were.
And that was early because that was July 2017, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that totally screwed. I was checking my like phone every single like minute for I don't know like however long it took for that one to clear. But yeah, no. So like we had this long process, and we like built up a decent amount of cash where we went from I don't know, let's just call it like 100K to I don't know like 500K or a mil.
You know, the part of the formalization was, hey, like everyone, let's put up an equal amount of cash, and we'll all be, you know, equal partners in this company. So we all put up like 25K, right? Use 100K as our, you know, starting capital, and then JJ just went to town with that every day.
Yeah, and we just traded that up, and then we brought on the kind of the partners I told you. We had 2 other partners in the U.S. who had like private wealth connections at Chase Bank, and that's kind of how we routed some more money through the U.S. So then they put in some capital as well. But then honestly, like it was just compounding. When you're compounding at like 10 to 20% a day.
I mean, what was your average daily return? Was it like 10 to 20%?
So it depends. Do you factor in that massive period between like May through like whatever? Because then I think we averaged around like 15 to 20. But if you just took that December, January, which was really when like the big dollars came, like that was like 20 plus, well over 20.
It's insane. It's absurd.
Yeah, we actually ended up like losing a ton of money because of Christmas and New Year's because the banks were closed. So like eventually we got.
So were you like sitting on Bitcoin and it was dropping kind of thing at that point?
No. Like opportunity loss, right?
Oh, got it. Okay.
We had a spread of like 30 or 40% over like Christmas and New Year's, and like we just couldn't wire because the banks were closed.
Yeah, we're just like I never hated Christmas more. I never.
You should have got on a flight with some bags of cash or something. And
oh man, we have stories of that.
Yeah, I mean we knew. We knew a lot of people doing this in different ways. Like one of the guys that we had heard of was like, quote unquote, the largest importer exporter of, some certain fish. And if you look at all of the imports that he would do on, this type of produce or whatever, it's like, so you're saying that you as an individual person are buying, as much fish as like the GDP, buying power of all of Korea? Like, sounds a little sketchy. Or like people hauling physical gold, right? And like bringing in physical gold, bags of cash. But we just, I don't know.
Seems like you guys had a better strategy than them.
I think so.
Man, I think we still kick ourselves for not doing the cash transactions, because every Friday, a lot of guys from Korea, even guys we knew, would just have like a briefcase next to them, and they would have like a couple 100K, and they would just fly to Hong Kong, and they would deposit it with like ANX or there was another player, and they would just deposit the cash to buy the Bitcoin and then transfer it back. And we thought about doing it. And like, I actually requested the bank to get a bunch of cash on hand, and I was going to go like pick it up. And I was like, you know what? I was like, honestly, I don't want to get robbed. Like, I was like, this isn't worth it. Like, we've already made like a bunch of money. And then the bank like called us, and they were really mad at us because they were like, we transferred a ton of USD to this branch, and like you didn't pick it up. Like, are you coming? We're like, oh no, sorry.
Also, physical cash is very heavy. Like if you're trying to move cash, like in volume.
Well, and you can only bring 10K into the U.S. without
No.
declaring it.
You have to declare it.
Yeah.
Right. That's without declaring it. Without declaring it. Yeah.
No. So like that was the thing. If we had brought, 5 mil of cash or whatever to Hong Kong, we'd have to declare it first of all. And
That's hard to hide $5 million in cash.
Yeah.
Definitely not trying to hide anything, because also that amount is like 400 pounds, like 436 pounds of weight, something like that.
That was a very specific number that you threw out there. Seems like you guys looked into it.
We definitely looked into it.
And so what were the biggest challenges that you had? I mean, aside from, the time it actually took to deposit funds into Kraken and US banking hours?
Korean exchange withdrawal limits.
Right.
So Korean exchanges had like a maximum withdrawal limit of like 100K per day as a starting point. So like one of the things that happened was in November, December of 17, like Alex and I both just like went to Korea. And then we just started like knocking on the doors of all the exchanges and like getting physical meetings with them and just being like, can you increase our limits? And we were maxed out on BitThumb, we were maxed out on Coin One, and Corbit doubled our limit. We had the single highest withdrawal limit daily on Corbit. So like we knew that we were like, nobody was withdrawing more money a day than we were.
So you guys literally couldn't have deployed more capital than you did.
No, we like, and that was the thing. You were limited. I think we were limited at, what was it? Was it 5 or 7 million?
Korean won.
Yeah,
5 billion Korean won per day under our corporate structure, and like.
But it was 7 days a week, so it was 35 billion Korean won a week, which is
what's the USD equivalent on that?
Like 30 million a week.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And so did you guys ever, I mean, I guess at this point, if you guys had the capital, you didn't need to, but did you ever consider levering up on those trades just to, increase your returns?
You couldn't. Because
I mean, you couldn't borrow Bitcoin in the US?
No, the choke point became the withdrawals from the exchanges. So our capital actually kept matching the choke point of the bottleneck was the pulling it out of the exchanges.
I mean, did you guys not think about, hey, let's start 5 companies and just,
Okay, so this was, yes. But this was like the trick actually, was Korean banking is very much about your relationship with banks. So what happened was we just happened to get one company with one bank manager who was totally on board with what we were doing. And like that was the whole secret sauce, was like our relationships with the banks and that one company we had. If we started a whole new company, you would have had to start from scratch. Maybe you could get accounts, maybe you couldn't, and your limits would be super small. We did more volume with one really good company than guys we knew who had like 50 or 100 companies.
Right.
And I think the other part was like the relationships with the exchanges, because we talked with them about this, and like, they're doing the KYC, right? Especially for corporate accounts, which at the time they didn't do that many. And so they were like, please don't do this, because it's all the same people, it's all the same KYC, and they're already giving us a lot, right? And so it's Korea, and I think a lot of Asian culture in general is about give and take, right? And I think we're not just trying to take. We're trying to make it a great relationship so that if the nozzle gets cut off on our one company, that is infinitely worse than not getting as great of a relationship with 4 or 5 companies, right?
Right. If you guys were able to do 5 million a day, and you're talking at the end of it was 20 to 25%. I mean, you guys are taking $1 million a day. I mean, take it or leave it. There's some slippage and stuff like that, and maybe a little bit more cost. But I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah. So I think that's the other.
And how old were you guys at that point?
27.
27. Yeah.
That's wild. It's wild. And so how and why did you wind down that operation? I mean, if you're just making $1 million a day, I mean, I'm sure that's not the easiest thing to leave behind.
The bank's our bank man.
And JJ's Wi-Fi might have cut out at the hotel, but partly it was the bear market spreads, compressing things in 2018, but also as of the beginning of 2018, there were a lot more guidelines from the Korean FIU over banks saying like, you cannot process, any types of crypto related stuff. And so there's a lot of government pressure to tighten up the capital controls again, because it just got so blown out crazy. So it's just really difficult, right? Like the knowledge and information arbitrage effectively became increasingly more difficult, right? And the bank manager was like, now that crypto is like, Bitcoin is on the news in Korea, like aunties and uncles and, ajumas, ajashis, like they are like going in and like buying crypto. And so Korea is very protective of their citizens in terms of investment losses. And so because there was such a premium that they were like, the only possible outcome is it crumbles and it only hurts Korea, right? Because it gets compressed. And so they were like, how can we kind of curb this craziness? And so there was just, a lot more tightening of restrictions, a lot more, policies on the exchanges. And so I think that was also a contributing factor.
And so, I mean, being entrepreneurial, you guys probably tried a few different things. And I know that in 2018, you launched a Korean won-backed stablecoin, which I think makes sense, given your story, right? If you can't use the bank, use a stablecoin. And so was that kind of your first thing where it's like, hey, this is the solution to the problem? I mean, I'm sure you guys tried a lot of things or thought through things. It's hard to go from making $1 million plus a day to not making $1 million plus a day. So, would love to kind of hear that.
I think so me, Jiho, and Juan, like we're all tech entrepreneurs, right? And so the thing that we understand is building companies, building products. And I really give props to JJ, where he was the one who has a lot of the knowledge and insights on like, man, like we could build this network of, arbitrage companies or, like there are things that we can do to capture this. And so we were like, okay, JJ, like, what do we build? And he's like, let's build a stable coin, right? Because then if we get like other people, all the other market makers on board, we'll just give it to them as a product, right? And then, we own the underlying business. And this was when, Tether was gaining popularity, and it was kind of the rise of stable coins where you had TUSD and, everyone else coming out with whatever. And so I think that we might have been like one of the first non-USD stablecoins. And so that was a great extension where JJ had a cool vision on how we could use that product. And then we were just like, yeah, like we can totally figure out how to build it.
Yeah, it was interesting. The thought process was we knew that people would be better at arbitraging than we were. Like we sat down with like Sam, like before FTX was really this massive thing, right? We were talking
before he decided to become public, a year and a half ago.
Yeah. And like, I just remember talking to Sam, and I was just like, man, like you guys are so much better at arbitraging than I am. Like, I'm not even gonna like try to pretend that I'm as good at this as you are. And that was like the whole reason. I knew that from the start that we weren't going to be the greatest people at arbitraging. And like, it was really just a triangle trade, right? It wasn't even like a proper arbitrage.
Right.
So like the idea was, okay, like let's give away this opportunity and then try to own the underlying business.
Yeah. And I think part of it was like all of the IP that we had was understanding how the regulatory frameworks needed to, operate, and understanding the banks and how the comfort level with, I'd say, me and JJ as, Americans, as foreigners, were able to build more trust with people outside of Korea. Because for everyone else outside of Korea, it's like a black box. You're like, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know who to trust. I don't know, who to contact for, trying to do business there. And so I think we had a really great team between the two of us and Jiho and Juan, whereas like those guys handled everything inside of Korea. They were the face there. Everyone inside of Korea trusted them. And then everyone outside of Korea would interface with the two of us, and they trusted us. And so it was really a cool extension of we built the entire arbitrage business on trust, right? JJ just sending all of his money to Jiho. And I think that was, what we saw in crypto was really important is there's so much crazy shit going on. There's people that you don't know about all over the world. If we can just show that like this is a trustworthy and functional business, that's what we were banking on. And that's what we were banking on to kind of bring the KRWB token to success.
And we could go into so much more about the story, and I mean, I have questions about how you got banking, approval on this and all that. But I think that should be for another. That's another story for another time. But your KRWB eventually got acquired by Binance, and that led to you guys helping to co-found Binance Korea. So can you talk about that process, how that came about? How you even, how that even started, did they reach out to you? You reached out to them? Did you guys get acquired for BNB? Like, I'd love to kind of hear that part. And are you still sitting on that BNB? Because you guys should be really happy if you are.
Yeah. So we actually just became friends with a few people from Binance back in, I don't know, probably 2018. And we really had no interest in at the time they were an exchange. We were, kind of doing our own thing. There was really no synergy. We were all just kind of friends. And then it got to the point where Binance was really looking at expanding into a bunch of different regions. And it just became a very natural fit that using a stable coin plus banking infrastructure that we had could work really well. So it was actually just a really natural progression on how that deal kind of came to place. I don't think we actually ever or could ever discuss the terms of the buyout. None of that was public, and I don't think is ever going to be. So sorry to burst the bubble there. But I can tell you that we do have some BNB that we personally purchased. We did that one time. But no, so yeah, it was really cool working with them and building out kind of a new local exchange. Alex can talk more to kind of the hiccups that we ran into, because I think it was an unfortunate opportunity that didn't come to fruition because of the regulatory situation that arose in Korea. And it was specifically around what we were trying to do with the stablecoin and cross-border liquidity and neutralizing the spreads. And then Korea basically said, you're not allowed to do cross-border liquidity on Korean exchanges. And that kind of destroyed the entire business model of Binance Korea that we had built.
Yeah. It's so I'd say it was exceptionally exciting to work with a tech company like Binance that is growing at ridiculous rates, and them just trying to invest in all these different type of ecosystem plays, building all these different sorts of products. And so we basically agreed with them to be the first platform or local exchange that would come out on top of the Binance Cloud architecture. And we kind of aligned this in, let's say, middle of or end of 2019, which was before it was announced, before it was super ready. And it was for them a really awesome play because so many people at that time were trying to build the picks and shuffles. Everyone was I want to create an exchange, right? And in whatever country for whatever pocket of people that they knew. And so their play was, we want to give people a toolbox to just white label startup exchanges, because the big exchanges saw that as a really cool strategy to get other sellers effectively for liquidity. And so we were yeah, this works. This will work exceptionally well because no one else in Korea is doing order book sharing. And if we launch Binance Korea on Binance Cloud, we then just plug directly into Binance.com liquidity. And because we can operate the exchange on what we sunset KRWB, turned it into BKRW, you now guys have a cross pair of basically one of the only Korean won cross-country pairs. That didn't exist. So it was a new product, and especially because everyone was so how can we capture Kimchi premiums ourselves? We were we will hand this to you guys. It will just be a baked-in product for you guys. And they were super excited about that aspect. And fast forward, it was working, right? Like they listed BKRW on Binance.com. We launched the exchange in Korea. But yeah, as JJ said, like
BKRW was actually redeemable for KRW in Korea. So like the whole ecosystem was working.
How large did it get?
It didn't, I mean, it wasn't gaining a ton of traction in the first few weeks, and then regulation came like pretty soon after that. Right. Like it was like, that's why I say it was a really unfortunate missed opportunity, because like all the pieces were there for basically flattening the Korean premiums.
So other public, this is public information in Korea if you read Korean. So one of the hiccups along the way was obviously the bank was like, you can't do this, right? So they shut down the corporate accounts that we were using for BKRW, all right? And we were like, we totally can do this. And we sued the bank and we won. And they opened our accounts back up, right? So it's just like, there's just a lot of things that add friction, and especially in Korea, fiat on off ramps is super prominent, right? So Binance Korea, if you don't have any type of fiat banking, like every other exchange is is easier and faster to get money in. So I think that was a big difficulty. And then they are this year in 2021 focusing on their like Korean crypto regulations, and a lot of the policies kind of work against cross-border liquidity sharing and things like that. So it was.
And so as a result, is there still a premium in South Korea?
There is.
There is
2% today.
And so, let's kind of, segment into what you guys are doing now. And so now you guys are working on BXB Capital, full time, but obviously, you're not doing this, Korean American ARB and, going from 50 something percent down to 2%, obviously if you can make 2% a day, you're going to make a ridiculous amount of money. But obviously there's a lot of restrictions and things in place now. So what are some of the strategies that you're focused on now?
So my background is building technical systems. So we actually started kind of opening up a fund in 2018 for our own capital. And we kind of were working on some of the stuff that I was using before crypto. And it's kind of old school pattern recognition style things. So it's basically just like quantitative analysis on top of pattern recognition. And yeah, long, short futures trading. We've been doing that now live for about 1.5 years with our own capital. And for the first time, we started raising outside capital because we could deploy more than what we personally were trading. So yeah, it's kind of awesome to go back to kind of my roots, which is technical trading. And yeah, we have fully automated systems running now with, I don't know, like 200 individual components that are, running all on their own. And yeah, it's awesome. It's been a ton of fun.
And so how many assets are you trading?
Right. You mean like crypto assets?
Crypto assets, yeah.
Yeah, so we're predominantly trading BTC and ETH. It's a liquidity issue. So we're always takers. So it's like one of the biggest equations we look at is top of order book depth. So BTC and ETH is basically where it's at. So when we do smaller things, we're actually trading some BNB on like our algorithms. And yeah, but that's like a fraction of the portfolio compared to, BTC and ETH.
And so how are you actually routing these orders now? I mean, are you using, OTC? Are you using smart order routing? Are you just trading on individual exchanges? How are you splitting up orders?
No, it's all custom built. So this is where like Alex really, manages our tech team and builds a lot of the infrastructure. And then I kind of architect a lot of the strategies, the design. But we're, just connected directly to all the we're primarily trading Huobi and Binance right now. And we're trading the futures markets. We have our own order routing systems, our own processing engines. Yeah.
And so, one of the challenges, I mean, I guess you guys are only trading on 2 exchanges and you're trading relatively liquid markets, but one of the challenges that I always think about is the challenge of actually needing to physically have capital to deploy, right? So if you spot an opportunity on an individual exchange, actually having capital on that exchange. So how do you guys deal with that? Or is that just not something you're dealing with because you're basically just 50-50 between these exchanges?
Yeah, that's just like not a way that our systems trade. Like our systems are, so basically like think of it like a silo. And we have like 200 individual silos that have allocated capital to them. And then that that's like allocated silo will either go long, short, or do whatever it does in whatever asset it's trading. But it's completely independent of all the other units.
Right.
And we'll rebalance between all of those.
And these are all individual strategies basically that are running on their own.
It's basically one king strategy with 200 microvariants. It's probably the best way to say it.
Got it. And so what is, I mean, a few questions. One, you're obviously raising external capital, so you think you could scale this strategy. Where do you think it caps out?
Pretty big number. Like I think running 100 million is not too unreasonable. I think we're close to the tech level of development that we need to hit that number, but not quite there at this moment. But yeah, and I think within a year, it's a factor of that as well. So the way and the style we trade and the holding periods we have give us a lot of room for deployment ability.
And how long are your holding periods? And are you levering up now that you're trading futures?
We don't actually take leverage right now. It's something we'll consider. We look at MAR, right? So our entire way of framework for looking at trading is your risk over your reward over your drawdown. That's how we like to look at risk. So we're not taking leverage, but we will if it fits within the right risk reward ratios. But yeah, and the holding period is about 7 days. Yeah.
And so I was going through your website, and for BXB Capital or Block by Block Capital Fund 1, it says you're investing both in crypto and traditional markets. So can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, so I think one of the coolest things that I think everyone saw, but it doesn't seem like anyone is doing, is the non-correlation effect between crypto and the traditional traditional markets. And it kind of blew my mind that no one was doing anything on this. Like everybody wants crypto as part of their portfolio as like a non-correlating asset. But one of the greatest things in finance ever is non-correlation, just due to rebalancing. It's just like power of math. So to us, it was kind of a no-brainer. We were trading our own capital. We were like, why wouldn't we take some of the non-correlation effect inside of it, especially when you have that rebalancing effect? So yeah, it just felt like just a no-brainer mathematical equation.
And so are you
same strategies? It's actually the same pattern recognition, the same strategies. So for us, it's also something that works on both sides of the table. So easy to apply.
And what would you say your allocation is to crypto versus equities in terms of percentage terms?
So we trade traditional futures with 10x leverage. So it's effectively like 90-90, but
it's 90-10.
Yeah, it's 90-10. Exactly, right.
And so other than, I mean, I guess the crypto and equity thing does make you different than a lot of other funds out there, but why should people be excited about Block by Block? What are you guys doing that just makes you different than, the other crypto funds or the other traditional funds that are now, starting to touch digital assets?
I think we're in a pretty niche spot where we really appeal to guys who look at risk reward ratios. So you have people who have like super long, crazy exposure, crazy DeFi plays, crazy whatever, where they're looking for 10, 100Xs. And then you have the guys who are looking at more like a lot of the HFT funds or the ARB funds. And, they have amazing risk ratios, but their also returns are a lot lower. So we're looking at a sweet spot where we try to capture a large percentage of the upside, but then take a fraction of the downside. Which really puts us into kind of our own separate category. There's definitely a couple people in our category for sure. It's probably closest to like CTA style in traditional markets. It's probably like the category people would put us in. But I think our risk reward ratios are really where we separate ourselves from most other players.
I also think that we've had a lot of conversations with like the crypto fund of funds, and we've gotten some really nice polite compliments from them in terms of how we kind of organize and execute our strategies is different than a lot of the other funds that they've talked to. So I think that kind of reassures us to the proprietary ways that we feel like, the what we're onto is different, right? And it's not like, oh yeah, we've heard of a crypto fund doing stuff like that. And the way that we can trade perpetual futures, and some of the things that we can do to combine extra alpha on top of our baseline strategies is also, maybe not being executed by like other types of funds.
And so given that you're trading both crypto and equities, what are you actually benchmarking against?
We mostly benchmark probably BTC because I think at the end of the day, if we could capture 75% of the upside of the crypto market, which is BTC dominated, and if we only took 25% of the downside, like obviously that's like targets. If we can hit that as a whole different equation, but yeah, like I think that's the ultimate dream, and then obviously improving on things to where we capture more than the upside of the crypto market, and we take as little to no downside as possible.
I mean, that's obviously the dream. That's
Yeah.
that's what you guys were able to accomplish in 2017. But was a different time.
JJ does all the dreaming, and I figure out how to get it done. There's our duo right there. Done.
And so aside from the fund, I mean, the fund isn't taking any long-term fundamental and investment approach, is it at any point? And are you guys doing that with your PAs at all, like your personal accounts?
We have like a tiny, I don't know, I guess it's not tiny anymore, but it's like a troll account where we just like, we're like, okay, let's just hold some crypto. And we do everything together. And then, that portfolio did pretty well. And then we're like, oh, okay, like crypto's pretty stupid. Like this is ridiculous. Like we held Dogecoin because we thought it was funny. And then Dogecoin obviously like made this huge move after everything. We're like, that's just stupid.
Crypto is so dumb. Look, I love crypto. I'm in it full time. I'm like 90% of my liquid net worth is in crypto. That wasn't on purpose. It's just because of what happened in this market. Plus my company is crypto. I mean, I'm like fully exposed to this market and it's stupid as hell. Like it is so ridiculous. I mean, I just did an episode with Shane, as I told you, actually just recorded right before you from Bybit. I don't know which one's going to come out first. So if you didn't listen and it's already out, listen. If not, it's coming in a couple days. But we were just talking about like DeFi and just all this stupidity. I mean, like yield farms are popping up out of nowhere and tokens are going from like 5 cents to $20 in a few seconds, then down to 5 cents. And you're getting 2,000,000% APR by providing these different liquidity pools. And there's just so much stupidity, but it's great. Like it's so much fun. Like if you're into, and I think a lot of, I don't know about the South Korean culture, but I know that the Chinese culture and a lot of Asian cultures are very much into gambling. If you're into gambling, I mean, there is no better place to be than crypto. I mean, you could get 2,000,000% APR. I mean, I was trading on something called Toad Finance the other day before I got out before I think it rug pulled. But I mean, you can, this market is so stupid, but it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for us, it's like we were like, it is so crazy and it will make a bunch of people a bunch of money. In like early 2020, we were like, okay, let's just like side pocket a bunch of this stuff. I think the most degen thing that we did was like, we each built our own portfolio and now every week we compete in a horse race, right? So it's like, okay, like JJ's all about the technicals of like, okay, what has 1,000x back to top? What has 100x back to top? I'm like, I like the engine metaverse. Like these guys are going places, like these types of things. So
what is the shittiest thing you guys are holding right now?
100% Populous. I don't even know what it is.
I've never even heard of
what it is. It was like I went down the list and it just had like 100 or 1,000. Like it had some ridiculous multiple back to its all-time high. I was like, let's definitely buy some of this.
Populous. I just typed it in Google. CoinMarketCap didn't even pop up. Let's see what.
Yeah. I think
it's up 2% today. 113 million market cap. Oh God. Down from all time.
That's way more. I think it had a market cap of like 10 million when we bought it or something like that.
Something dumb.
Question is, can you get out of Populous? The volume on its most liquid pair is Populous. BTC is doing 518,000 in volume on Binance.
Yeah. Oh no, it's dumb. It's literally just so dumb. Yeah, but like honestly, we try to avoid that, right? Like it's fun to talk about, and we like. Our little horse race bet between us was pretty funny because we're just like, oh, my shit coins are doing better than your shit coins. But like, that's just not our approach. I mean, I come from a very strong like financial and wealth management background, and we really try to focus on like our risk adjusted returns, and we really try to like stay level headed. So as much fun as it is to like throw tiny gambles out there,
it's also so distracting. Like
It's
to
so distracting.
like it's incredibly distracting, right? And I think like we need to make sure that our attention is on our fund, right? And that we are focused on already crypto trades 24/7 and our systems are operating and live 24/7. And if we distract ourselves with things like this, it's just like there's not enough time in a day, right? And so I think we make peace with like, yeah, other people definitely make like 1,000x, 100x, like, and we're okay, right? Like, I think we are passionate about what we do, and I am definitely passionate about building all of our internal, proprietary systems. Like, that's why I get out of bed, right? It's really fun working with our engineering team. Working with JJ and his dad on like, what is it that you guys need to trade better, to back test better, right? Like just do things in a smarter, more scalable way. And we just have that long-term mindset, right? Like we want to still be here in 3, 5, 10 years, just kind of in a good spot.
We also said like a long time ago that there's a lot of ways to make money, and we don't want to make money the shitty ways. Like when we got offered to move money for like Russian arms dealers, and there was, I don't know, like, no, like true story. It was like back in the arbitrage days, and basically there was going to be like, I don't know, like 10 or 20 million in it for us. And we were just like I don't really want to help people money launder. Like, like that's not like a business we want to be in. And I think we kind of took the same approach with like a lot of these crazy new tokens coming out is we don't see value in them. So it's just an infinite Ponzi scheme. And I don't necessarily want to profit from other people losing money.
Fair enough. That's respectable. And so one question that we have to ask, because we ask all of our guests, it's the Fundamental Value Podcast, is how do you define fundamentals for crypto, and are there fundamentals, or is everything outside of Bitcoin just a Ponzi scheme in your view?
I definitely believe that there is fundamental value in the entire crypto ecosystem, including the DeFi space. And for me, it's about, and it's definitely part of the factor on why I was so interested in coming into the space full time. It's about there is definitely a paradigm shift happening in terms of developing products. And I think the easiest way to assess value is cost reduction, right? Like these types of DeFi finance products remove middlemen, they make transactions cheaper, they remove infrastructure, right? And like at a bank, like to get to the quality and the reliability of financial infrastructure is like, it's very costly, right? And to facilitate these types of transactions, when you boil it down to, people trying to just do cross-border remittance, there's a lot of cost in that. And so if you just look at the ability to remove costs and build new, like the same finance products, but building them in a cheaper way, like automating P2P loans, borrowing, these types of things, there is a lot of fundamental value in that. But what happens is it's very commoditized. And so when you have this DeFi platform that rolls in and forks to this other thing, they're all exactly the same. And all they're trying to do is commoditize the product and then make money off of the hype and make money off of the community. Because it is true, right? Like the bank that has the most AUM will make more money than the banks who don't have that much AUM. So there is a lot of value. And I also see a lot of personal value in the supply chain applications, the Providence, like the oracles, like there are a lot, right? Like you have a lot of facets that add a lot of fundamental value. It's just so tough because there aren't that many users, and you can only have value growth when you have people using it. And I think that's where everyone is like, we want to get in now because inevitably once it blows up, there's going to be so many users, and that will balloon value.
And so, how long do you guys think this bull market is going to last for? I mean, you guys were part of the correction. And do you think this is going to look similar to 2018, where you have populace down 99.9% or whatever from its all-time high? What do you think? What do you think it's going to look like? Or do you think because of all this institutional capital in Bitcoin, we're not going to see the same correction, or is it going to be limited to alts? I mean, what are your kind of thoughts?
I mean, Bitcoin has been on like this decreasing wave, like technical pattern since its inception, basically. And it's kind of like, it's like a 4-year cycle, and a lot of people have identified it. And I think it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy where everyone sees the correction coming, everyone sees the bull run coming, so they trade it as such. So I mean, I said, like, I basically, in 2018, we were out of the markets, and I thought Bitcoin was going to go to 2,700, and it went to 3K, and we didn't buy anything, so we were just stupid. But like, when it was about at like 3K, 6K, like I thought Bitcoin was going to go to 50K, and we've hit that. I now think that we might be going higher, but it's tough to tell. I think we have maybe like another like 3 to 6 months, maybe 9 months tops of like bull run left, and I think we
It's
will
a long
see
bull run, considering how fast this market has moved.
I mean, if like, I'm just looking at what happened historically, right?
Yeah, no, makes sense. And
replicate
analogies are important, right?
Yeah.
in how
So
you smart
if
things.
you just kind of like play all that out over again, I think it's something like that. Like, yeah, I would say like maybe, 75, 100K on Bitcoin in the next like 3 to 9 months. And then we're going to see probably a correction that comes pretty far to like 10, 20K. That would just be my guess. But like the good thing is we don't
Do you
have
really think we're going to, I mean, given all the institutional capital in this space, do you really think we can correct all the way back to 10K? I mean, if we get anywhere near that, you better bet that any penny I have left in the bank is going right into Bitcoin. So, and I'm
I
assuming
think
there's a lot of high net worth family offices. I mean, we talk to them on a daily basis, institutions, pensions, endowments that are now allocating to this space. I mean, at least in my mind, and look, just my opinion, I feel like Bitcoin feels safer than it did before in terms of ability to correct, just because people now tend to be less speculative, at least in my opinion. But I think you're on altcoins, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think it probably similar, and I'd love Alex for you to provide your opinion after as well.
I was just gonna say I think 75 to 80% correction is still very possible on Bitcoin. Might be 60, but yeah, I could totally see a big correction.
From my opinion, I'm definitely a terrible trader. I'm definitely not a trader. We leave anytime we need to trade things by hand, I don't have enough patience. So I've been learning, and I think for me, like, what I pick up on is the interest level and how people try and use it. And I think there's a lot of I think there's going to be a lot of buying power coming in that adds support, but there is a lot of things that don't really matter on price per se, like the way that people are trying to find ways to use a lot of the tokens and build on top of Bitcoin as a way to secure information, right? Like just utilizing the blockchain or different functionalities, right? That maybe don't have as much close ties to the price. So that's really tough, and it's really just about like valuations in tech companies are pretty crazy these days, right? In general, right? And then you're talking about now there are tech crypto companies that also have crazy valuations. So it could evaporate, but more people could totally come into the space, which means that, yeah, like it's really difficult to know.
And so my final question was actually going to be around shit coins, but we already hit on that. And so, I guess my final question would be, what is the biggest lesson you learned from your experience with the Kimchi premium? What is your biggest takeaway?
Oh man. You know what? I know what mine is. Mine is trust is everything. And it was interesting working with crypto, which is meant to be this like trustless environment, but it still came down to the trust of the other person on the other end and the trust of the partners that you're working with.
It's a great answer. I like that answer.
I think I'm gonna fork my answer into a good one and a funny one. And
let's end with the funny one. So do the good one first.
Do the good one. Yeah, okay. So the good one is like, I actually learned a lot about financial products and applications and like the financial system. So like there was just a lot of like understanding on how monetary policies work, how like inter-country economies work, inflation. So that was like, that was really great. That was very insightful. The funny one is like, definitely like, don't like block block times and trying to trade block times, and especially when you have all these different forks, man, we learned like, don't trade all of the upcoming forks for every little Bitcoin spin-off, like Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Gold, like whatever. That was what we learned, because that was super, super painful. When we were just like, hey, Bitcoin Cash, that sounds cool. Is it just like Bitcoin? Yeah, let's just totally do that. Same spreads, more free money. We just like split our money in half. That totally makes sense. It did not work like that.
Yeah, there you go. And ending lesson is, if the previous block time was 20 minutes, does not mean the next block time will be 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, look, I really appreciate you having you on, and I think this is the first time you've ever publicly shared this story. So, at least in a forum like this, if not, I can at least entertain myself and pretend it is. But really appreciate it. It's a great story. It's awesome. And so we'll have it in the description. But where can people find you guys online and find out more about the fund?
People can go to our website, bxbcapital.com.
Or just like email us or hit us up on Twitter or
I don't have
Twitter.
I don't have a Twitter.
Telegram. I don't have a Twitter.
Don't find us on Twitter. We're not there.
Look on Twitter, but we're not there.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I will make sure to get your information to drop in the description. So thanks again, guys. It was great having you on.
Thank you very much.